Number 1. My brother once raped me and I'm still in love with him. I was 14 and my brother was 16 when our mom left. We didn't have anyone else, so he basically took care of us. He left school to work full-time so that he could afford to pay for rent and food. At the time I was really ungrateful because we didn't have much food and couldn't afford anything that my friends had, but looking back I'm really grateful that he took care of me. Anyway, when I was 15, I started dating my first boyfriend. He was much older, I think he was 21, and he was just an all-around bad guy, but at the time I thought that we had something special. One night, I had stayed at his house really late. We were sitting with some of his friends drinking beer when my brother came over. My brother came inside to get me. He grabbed me by the arm and walked me outside. I was telling him that I wanted to stay, and my boyfriend and his friends pulled me away from him and beat him up. I was crying and telling them to stop, which they eventually did, and then we got in the car and left. When we got home, I was still angry at him, and I stormed straight to our room and got into bed. I could obviously see that he was bleeding, but I didn't realize until later, but he was actually pretty badly beaten. He had a black eye, a big gash on his lip, and he also had massive black bruises all over his ribs. He spent about half an hour in the bathroom, cleaning up before he came in, at which point I started complaining about how he wasn't my mother, and he didn't get to say who I could spend time with. He didn't say anything, but he was visibly angry with me and he came over, pushed me onto the bed, and then held me down and raped me. I was crying the whole time but he didn't stop. After it was over, he rolled over and went to sleep and I spent the whole night crying. From the next day onwards, he slept on a mattress on the floor, which he did until I left for college, and apologized every day for about 3 weeks, and then we never talked about it again. I know that it's horrible, but ever since that night I've felt like I am in love with him. I thought that it would go away, but it still hasn't. I've never told him about it and I never will, but I feel incredibly guilty about how I feel. I have dated 2 guys, but I ended it once it got close to sex. I do want to get married and have children one day, but I just feel like I'm broken or something. Number 2. I ended my ex-best friend's career, ruining her life. This was a few years ago. I used to be friends with this girl in college, we'll call her Jackie, and we're both pursuing our nursing degrees. We got along really well for a majority of the school year, except towards the end. I began liking a boy who she knew about, and then had sex with him anyway. We both talked about it, and she understood how hurt I was, and promised never to do something like that again. Fast forward to nearing our graduation, like 1 year later, another boy I had been seeing for a while came to our place for a pre-party. We all left at the same time. Jackie and I shared an apartment, and then went to the party. Jackie left, and so did the boy. I figured they were both going to campus together, since we had apartments next to each other, and so I just stayed with the rest of my group. I came back, only to hear them having sex. I was devastated. He was my boyfriend, and I finally thought I found the one. It was a few short months, yes, but still, he was so sweet and I thought he cared about me. I knew I needed to get back at her for hurting me, and here is how I did. We both smoked marijuana, heavily. After graduation, I still was pretending to like her. We both moved back home, which ironically was close to each other, and began working at the same hospital as nurses, different units. Our hospital had a strict drug policy which forbid any drug use. I stopped smoking, but she didn't. I would always convince her to, and I'd just have a drink, or pretend to take a hit from it. Sometimes I'd even fake roll one, and just smoke a cigarette, while she smoked marijuana. After about 2 months of me stopping marijuana, and her continuing, I left an anonymous note on my manager's desk saying, "Jackie is high now. You need to test her. She would never go to work high, just smoke a day before her shift. She was never ever inebriated while working." Well, about 1 hour later, occupation health came, and everyone, doctors, techs, unit clerk, cleaning staff, etc., was tested on the unit to prevent any discrimination, and if you left, you would be breaking policy and risk termination. Jackie immediately texted me after freaking out in the break room that she needed to talk. I ran up and faked to have no idea, and was comforting her saying it'd be fine and nothing to worry about. 1 week later, terminated. She violated the drug policy which results in immediate termination. She was blacklisted at the hospital and all nearby ones as well. Because of the state I was in too, New York, at the time it was a controlled substance, which made it especially bad. We worked at that hospital for only a few months. Now, she has only been able to work in a local office, as a nurse or receptionist, making about 1/4 of what she could have been. No other job will hire her. Maybe one a few states away would, but I am not sure. Do I regret this? Yes. I was an asshole and fucked up bad. Will I ever tell her? Probably not. But is karma bitch? Certainly. Number 3. I accidentally had a sexting relationship with my brother. Around 2 years ago, when I first joined Reddit on my old account, I posted to NSFE subreddits a lot. I am fairly confident in my body and didn't mind showing it off at the time. Now that I have a boyfriend, however, my tune has changed on that subject matter. I post at least twice a day and get a bunch of messages. One guy kept commenting and messaging me, telling me I was sexy and how much he loved my body. For some reason I kept talking to him, and we basically developed a sexual relationship and sexted all the time, but we never showed our faces. He was very nice and sweet to me even when we weren't talking about sex. Keep in mind that I was always very private about my identity because I didn't want anyone to blackmail me. I even made up a name and location as to where I live. I thought it was a bit weird that this guy had the same name as my brother, although my brother is very good looking and 10/10 would bang if he wasn't my brother and lived in the same state, but figured it was simply a coincidence. For his birthday, a few months after we met, he sent me a pic of himself without a shirt on and his magic stick erect and told me he wished I was there to suck him off and asked me if I liked the new tattoo he got for his 25th birthday. But I was in the living room downstairs, celebrating my brother's birthday, his 25th one. It was the same tattoo my brother showed me earlier that day. It was the same bathroom, same shower curtains, same hair products, same perfume, same toothbrush colors, same everything. I was mortified, but I didn't stop. My brother really is a hot guy, and I liked what he had below the equator. I couldn't help myself, so I continued to sex with him for a few more months until I told him I had gotten a boyfriend and could no longer do that with him. He understood and we went our separate ways. The worst part, I still touch myself to his pics on occasion.